Hey, hey, hey. Hey, everybody. It's Friday. And what that means is we're ready to do another episode of the fabulous Fame and Makeup with me, Julie Beck. This week, I'm going to share with you a very interesting story about an actress named Marlo Thomas. She stole my heart in her hit series That Girl, which was in the late 60s, early 70s. But she is a very strong woman, an activist, a producer, um, just very talented and beautiful, beautiful person. So let's get started and let's talk about Marlo Thomas. Now, as I'm talking about Marlo Thomas and sharing her life and rise to fame and all, I'm going to be applying the makeup that she wore similarly in her TV show, which would be the late 60s, early 70s. So let's get started. Now, a little baby was born in Detroit in 1937, and her name was Margaret Julia Thomas. Now, this cream foundation is what I'm going to be using if you want a really flawless, full coverage look. It'll hide everything. I'm also using this tool, which blends really well, and if you use it in a circular motion, it just distributes the makeup evenly. Her mom's name was Rosemarie Casaniti, which was Sicilian American, and she started out as a singer, and then when she got into motherhood, she just became the full out, nurturing, loving mom, right? Great mommy, mama bear. Dad was Catholic Lebanese American, and he was the famous Danny Thomas. Now, there were two other little children born after Marlo, and one was Tony, who later became a film and TV producer, and her little sister, Terry, who became an actress. Now, let's talk. They all were raised in Beverly Hills, by the way. Let's talk about where Marlo got her name. It was Margaret, right? How did it go from Margaret to Margot to Marlo? Well, I'll tell you. Very simply put, the kids, or maybe it was Marlo, really, you know, couldn't pronounce Margot, which was her little nickname, Margaret Margot. So it went from there to Marlo, which was easier to pronounce, I guess. And there was her name. Now, what's really cool, she didn't have to change her name, like a lot of actresses do. That stage name we've talked about before, she didn't have to do it. It was already cool, right? Marlo Thomas. Voila, there you have it. And that's how her name became Marlo, and that's the beginning of her life. So let's talk about Marlo's dad for a minute. Now, he was, while I'm blending just a little bit more with this brush, because blending is so important just to get some of those spots. Her dad was named Amos, and he changed his name to an American sounding name, Danny. So he is professionally known as Danny Thomas. Now, Danny Thomas was, just using a highlighter here, he was very talented. He was an actor, a singer, a comedian, and a philanthropist. Did I say that right? That's the hardest word for me to pronounce. Now try saying that word fast 10 times, right? Philanthropist. Anyway, besides that, he was a very loving, nurturing dad, it sounds like. And when life would get a little tough or sticky situation or something, the comedian he was, and probably his personality, would say something funny and then just lighten up the whole the air in the room. That's pretty fun, right? Your whole life having somebody do that makes a difference. So Marla grew up in the entertainment industry, right? And she was just surrounded by dad's celebrity friends and everybody in his world. And she would get involved in his acting world, and she really liked it.
So, being surrounded in that world, it really made an influence on Marlo to get into the acting world, and this exposure really set her on that career path. It's really good. So, at 8 years old, she's cueing her dad with lines. She's going to the studio with him and just doing some contouring here with a brown. She's going to the studio with her dad, and she is sitting on the director's lap. Now, she's 8 years old, remember? And she's just watching the whole thing, the rehearsal, the everything involved, the lines, and she's seeing people in costume and Indian costumes, and she's quite on the set. She's like lights, camera, action. She's just loving the whole thing. And that's when she made up her mind. I want to be an actress. I want to do this too. I mean, this is pretty cool. And that's what started her acting career. 8 years old. She knew it. Now, Marlo went to high school. You remember they were raised in Beverly Hills, and she went to school at a private Catholic school, girls' school, and it was called Marymount High School in LA. And then after she graduated, she went on to USC in LA also. And even though she knew she wanted to be an actress, she got a degree in teaching. Pretty smart, right? Now, her dad and mom, her family, growing up in a famous family, right? She was encouraged to pursue her own goals and not rely on her dad's name. It's pretty good advice if you ask me. Her dad was very supportive, but she was encouraged to pursue her own goals and make her own identity. Now, if that isn't the best advice from a famous, loving, nurturing parent, I don't know what is. Now, while Marlo was still in college, and for the next so many years, she started doing bit parts and guest appearances on different shows, like Bonanza was one of them. Some of them I'm not familiar with, but she did this for 10 to 11 years. So she got a lot of experience, right, doing that. But it wasn't until she did a Broadway show. It was a London performance, a production of Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park. And that was her big break, and that's when things started to rock and roll. Now, the eyebrows on Marlo were kind of pointed right here, and then they go all the way down. So that leads to an ABC pilot called Two's Company in 1965. Now, that one did not sell, but it caught the attention, right? One thing always leads to another. And that executive liked her in, it was called Two's Company, and that led to them starting to talk about that girl. And that girl is what made Marlo Thomas hugely famous. As famous as her dad or more. I mean, that's really what changed everything. So let's talk about that girl. Marlo and the network programming executive meet, and they talk, and he expresses an interest in casting her in her own show. Is that cool? Yeah. If you have too much eyebrow, let's say, you just block it out with your white concealer, and then you get that shape that you want. The show was groundbreaking at this time. It's centered on Anne Marie. That's her character name. You know, like I said, moving and living in New York. And you just didn't see that in those days. So the network was a little hesitant. It's like, this isn't really reality. You know what I'm saying? What was going on at the time is, you know, this was 1965, 66. And the reality was that young people got married pretty young, and they started a family. And I'm just putting some white here, which opens up the eye area, which Marlo also had. They've started their family, and dad goes to work or finishes up school, whatever he's doing, and he's the breadwinner. Mom, with the kids, becomes a housewife, as we call it now, a stay-at-home mom. And that's what the TV shows on at that time showed. So we had shows like Father Knows Best. That kind of says it all, right? Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver. Now, that show was about a little boy, the Beav, but it still had that family dynamic where everybody had their roles. So for this new idea of a single woman, this energetic woman that wants to go to New York and become an actress, but they did it. They took the risk, and it turned out great. Now, Marlo was not only the star of the show, but she was also a producer. And she had this creative control over it. She was in equal control over it, and gave her a platform to shape its message. So I was too young to understand the message when I watched the show. Maybe I was watching reruns, I don't know, but I didn't really get a message. What I got at that young age was just a fun show to watch. I loved it. I mean, she was so pretty and funny and witty and just cute as ever, and just all this energy in the show, along with I'm sure the direction, but her wardrobe. She had the cutest hats and gloves and coats. Really fun. And then the sets were really colorful, and her co-stars were the best. I mean, Ted Bessel played her boyfriend who wrote for a magazine, and Dad, played by Lou Parker, was great. And you could see they were having fun. The chemistry was all there, that they were all working well together. And I think that comes across in a show. So it was great. It really was great. It ran for 5 years. It was a total success. 136 episodes, right? And she also got to relay this message with this feminine undertone. She ended up getting some awards for being in that show. So she won the Golden Globe Award as Best Female TV Star, and then went on to be nominated 4 times through the Emmys for her performance at television's Best Leading Actress. I just love that when I hear things like that. It's like, we're acknowledged for the hard work that we've done, for being so good, so talented. So, hats off to her. I think the message that was coming across in the show was that women could be independent and strong, and they could make it on their own. They could make their own money. They could take care of themselves. They weren't dependent on anybody. And I think that was really the message coming across in that show. I think at that time, Marlo also realized that the media could really influence people's way of thinking. It could kind of challenge some social norms. And it did. I think it did. And it also opened her eyes. When she'd get letters from girls saying, I need help, what should I do? After watching her show, doesn't get more personal and closer than that, right? And so she started thinking more on how can I help people. And that show was, it really influenced her journey, her next chapter to get into activism. So during the course of the show, Marlo just became very educated and aware of what was going on in our world and changes that needed to happen. She met with prominent activists and thinkers, and really, it taught her and opened up her mind. But before we get into that more, let's talk about her love life, because I know we all want that information because we want everybody to be happy. So let's talk about that next. Now, before Margot met her true love, of course she had other relationships. She had some kind of short term but brief relationships. One was a man named Herb Gardner, and he was a respected playwright. And they dated for a little bit, and then also, maybe a rumor, I don't know, but kind of read that maybe she dated her co-star Ted Bessel, who played Donald in the show. Sometimes it's just the timing of things. We're both single, and a little brief relationship. And then there was a David Geffen, 1996, and maybe they were just really good friends. I don't know. I'm not here to judge or any of that, but she said at one point that she was never going to get married until, never say never, because when she met Phil Donahue, that went out the window, right? She was about 40 years old. It was 1977, and she's a guest on a show. And this was a talk show, and he was very successful. I mean, his show ran for, 10 years, something around there. Did very, very well. I believe it was based in Chicago, so they didn't live too close together. She's in LA and he's in Chicago. But it was the perfect timing. They hit it off, and it was kind of love at first sight. Love that. Now, her and Phil got married a couple years later, and I'm sure it was a beautiful bride. She wore like an off-the-shoulder tea-length white gown and white satin heels, and he wore like a black suit with a striped tie. And it was a very private ceremony with friends and family, and I believe it was at her parents' house. So romantic, right? Well, she also became a stepmom of 5 kids, and she was more like a friend to them. And they did have some challenges, like every marriage does, with, starting out with the long distance and adjusting, having the step family, living apart. But they seemed to work it out, right? So after about 40 years later, they wrote their own book really well, right? And how fun to do something together like that and just celebrate your success, in marriage and with your partner. I think that's great. So they also did a podcast together, and it was called, they hosted it, it's called A Date with Marlo and Phil. A double date with Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue. Now, I'd like to go back and just talk a little bit more about the book they wrote together, because it was a success also. That's the book called What Makes a Marriage Last, right? And being together over 40 years, they would know. But it got good reviews. It got just the bestseller status, and reader ratings were high. 640 pages. And it did really well. And it's something they must have been really proud of, right? I mean, I would be. One, proud of the marriage lasting that long, and two, this book that they write together, that must have been fun. And then it doing well. So they ended up together for 44 years. That's a long time. And unfortunately, Phil got sick, and he had a long illness going on, and he passed away in 2024 with Marlo and his family right by his side. But what a gift to find somebody that you fall in love with, that you spend the majority of your life with, and the happiness and the love. I mean, I think that's a true gift, and congratulations to them. Marlo Thomas won so many awards and was nominated and honored, and I want to honor her too. So I'm going to go over a few of some of these awards just so you kind of get a better idea. And I'm going to go kind of in categories. There's so many. The Primetime Emmy Awards, she was the winner for Outstanding Children's Special, and it was called Free to Be You and Me. And this is 1974. She won that one. She won Leading Actress in a Miniseries in 1986 for, it's called Nobody's Child. You already know about That Girl. She won that one, and then she was nominated for a couple more Emmy Awards. Golden Globe Award, you know, she got the That Girl one and nominated. There was one in 1986-87. Consenting Adult, Nobody's Child. She got nominated for that. Daytime Emmys. The blush you want to kind of put right on your cheek, and then just blend it. Marlo's is pretty standard on that pretty face. Daytime Emmy Award, she won for another children's programming called The Performers. The Body Human. I haven't seen some of these, so I'm not sure, but she just kept getting all these awards. The Grammy Award, another winner for a child. I didn't realize she did so many children's things, but she did. She did. It just goes on and on. But other honors, and you can look this up, I'm going to have it in the background, but other honors, of course, she got the, something else you can do with the blush, which is really fun, is you can just kind of tie it together here. No matter who I'm doing, kind of balances it all out. Other honors that Marlo received was she was inducted into the Broadcasting and Cable Hall of Fame, Presidential Medal of Freedom. Oh gosh, Gracie's Lifetime Award. Of course, she got the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, right, for television. And this is kind of fun. I'm not mentioning them all, but I do need to honor her too because she's just great and gave so much back besides her talent in entertaining us. She gave a lot back, and she's just so passionate about some of these things she was working towards. But one thing she got, which I think is kind of fun, is you know how baseball trading cards have been around forever? Well, these sisters kind of invented their own cards, and it was honoring famous women. Marlo Thomas got on one of these cards. There were 72 of them, I think, and this is in 1979. It was called Super Sisters. And Marlo made it on those too. So, I don't know. I'd be kind of thrilled if I saw my picture on a trading card, right? she did a lot and got acknowledged for it. And she's not done. She just keeps going and going. Now, what's going on with Marlo Thomas now? Well, I am happy to report that she is alive and kicking. Cool, right? And at 87 years old, she still acts. She still is the National Outreach Director for St. Jude's, which her dad had started, remember? And she makes appearances and, for all those organizations that she supports, she still goes to these events and is very active with that. Now, I just want to say that she has had such a bright career in her acting, on television, the music, the children's programming, but also through her activism. She has really made a difference. I mean, she took a risk with that girl, right? Back in 1966, and went on to do the activism and really made an impact. And I'm just so proud of her. What a strong woman that we're so fortunate to have. And she really made a mark, and she touched my heart. And cheers to Marlo Thomas.